This video is going to show you how to create a radial color wheel design using tints and shades. First, I'm going to show you how to get your design drawn out. You want to trace around the circle template, and don't forget to make that little dot in the center. It's a little hole in the center of the circle. And then go around. And I also want you to make the little marks where you see that the wedges are divided. So there are 12 wedges total, so that should mean that you have 11 little divisions. That's how it should look. Now what you're going to do is take a ruler and make the edge of the wedges. You can either draw a line straight across, or you can just go from the middle out to create the edge of each wedge. It doesn't really matter, whatever works best for you. And you should have 12 wedges total for all 12 colors on the color wheel. That's how it should look, like a wheel or a pizza. Now I'm going to go to my wedge template and I'm going to make my design. I want to have at least 7 shapes, but not too many more than, I would say, like 11 or 12. And do not make them too complicated, because you are going to have to paint this. Not once, not twice, but 12 times. So don't make yourself crazy. You're going to number the shapes in your wedge, and I want you to scatter the numbers around. So in other words, don't put your number 1 shape right next to your number 2 shape, so on and so forth. You want different numbers that are further apart to be next to each other, because these numbers are our values and we don't want our values to blend together. I also traced my shapes in Sharpie so that it's easier to see when I go to put it on my color wheel in my next step, so you can do that as well. Now we want to get this design into all 12 wedges on our color wheel. You might be able to see it by putting your paper on top so you can trace, but you might also not be able to. So that was the case for me. So what I had to do was I actually brought it over to the window so the light behind it would shine through. You can use a light table as well as the window. Both will work. So then you're going to carefully move your wheel around and trace your wedge template design into all 12 wedges, and do not forget to label your colors. It does not matter where you start, but please label your colors. Now you can number all of the shapes as you go around, or you can also just have the template next to you. I started by numbering, and then I tried to do a few without numbering, and it was very confusing to me, so I actually went back and numbered them. And here's what our numbers are going to correspond to. So now we're going to actually go ahead and paint this design. I always like to start with one of my primary wedges. You can see from our key here that our number 4 is the hue, so that is just the pure color by itself. And then 1, 2, 3 are different tints, and 5, 6, 7 are different shades. I'm going to start with my 4, which is the hue by itself, because it's already there for me. It's already mixed up. So I'm going to find number 4, and I'm going to paint it red, which is just the hue by itself, no black, no white. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my lightest tint. So there's a little bit of color, but a lot of white. Remember, when mixing our tints, we want to put the color into the white. So this is going to be my number 1. So I have a couple little shapes and one big shape. And I am mixing up that first tint. There's probably enough residual color on your brush to just mix with the white at this point, because it's a very light tint. And I'm going to paint this into my number 1 shapes, making sure it's nice and fully mixed up before I begin to paint. And I'm using what I know about good brush technique to really make sure that I am taking my time and doing a good job when painting these shapes. Now I'm going on to number 2. So this is another tint, but it's a little bit darker. So now we have a little bit more color added, and I already have that one tint mixed up, so I'm just going to add a little more color into the tint that I just used rather than mixing it up from scratch. This is going to make things a lot easier. So make sure they're distinct though, that is important, but at the same time they don't change too fast because we still have to do our number 3. So we want to make sure that our 1, 2, and 3 are distinct from each other. Next thing for my darkest tint, yep, so I'm going to add a little bit more color into that mixture that I just had. And this is going to be my number 3. So I'm going to paint it into my number 3 space. Now you can see why you don't want numbers that are close to each other to be in shapes that are close to each other, because then they will just blend together potentially into one big shape. Now switching to my shades, I don't want to gray my color, so I'm going to make sure to wash and dry my brush thoroughly. And I'm also going to make sure to mix into a new thing of red, not where I was doing my tints. The 4 is already done for me, so I can skip right over that and go right to my 5. So I'm moving over a new little pile of red paint, and then you only need a teensy weensy amount of black. A little bit goes a long way. Actually, it took a little bit off there. So this is my number 5 shape, my number 5 value. I'm gonna put it there in the number 5 space. Then my number 6 is also a shade, but it's a little bit darker, so I'm going to take a little more black and mix it into that same mixture from my number 5. So again, I'm not starting from scratch with this mixture, I'm just adding a little bit more black into what I already have to make my workflow easier. Again, taking my time, using what I know about getting into the details and painting carefully into those edges. And then for my number 7, I'm just adding a little bit more black into that mixture. In this case, I needed a little bit more red because I was kind of running low on the paint. So that's why I put that in there. And I also added a little drop of water just to stretch the paint further. And there it is. That's my red wedge all completed. So we're going to do the same thing for all 12 wedges, working in the same exact way, but just switching up our starting color or our starting hue. I always like to do my 3 primary wedges first because, like I said, you get those straight out of the bottle, so you don't have to do any mixing of the hues before. So I'm working on my blue one right now, and then I'll do my yellow one next. There's my blue one. Here's my yellow. I'm just painting right over the numbers. It doesn't really bother me. It actually helps me to see the numbers. Now, when you do your secondaries, okay, so I'm pausing here, for the secondaries and the intermediates, it's really, really important to make sure that you have the correct hue to start out with before you mix your tints and shades into it, and also that you have enough mixed up, because if you don't have the correct starting hue mixed up, when you go to do your tints and shades, the whole wedge is going to be not correct. And the thing you have to remember about this is that it's sped up a lot. You're seeing a few minutes here, but it literally took hours to do this. So take your time, but also think about working methodically, and it will make your life a lot easier when you go to do this task. Here's my completed color wheel. You can see it's a radial design with the same shapes in the same value spots in all 12 wedges. So it is challenging, yes. It is time consuming, yes. But if you follow the steps and think about what you're doing and how you're working, you will have a good time, and I promise you, you will get a good result. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your color wheel design with tints and shades.